Uncommon Sense with Junia Doan, sharing the wisdom and insight of those who have been there and done that.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Uncommon Sense. A chance to be together with my guests, real people, real life, real opportunity. With me today is a friend of mine for many years, many years, Michele Oka Doner. My grandmother was a friend of her mother's, but in any case, Michele has lived her lifetime dream of becoming an artist, and indeed she is a very successful one as we speak. Furthermore, I want to tell you what I admire about Michele. Michele has the ability to put into words both the ephemeral and the universal. Very important quality and a very distinguished one. So welcome, Michele.
Thank you, Junia. It's nice to be here.
It's my pleasure as well. You know, life is full of vicissitudes, up and down, back and forth. When things go your way, it's very good. But when things go not your way, what do you tell yourself? How do you approach that?
I tend to take things in stride, except for this morning when the plane was delayed.
Right.
But otherwise, I tend to, as they say, go with the flow. For example, once I crossed the escarpment in Mali. In Mali, the United Nations has said, is one of the hungriest or poorest countries in the world. But I never really knew what that meant. And I was with a group of Americans, and whenever we were hungry, we ate. But we had never seen what it was like not to have food. So we got to the first encampment that evening, and we were hungry from walking, because once you cross these rocks, there's no, cars don't go there, so you walk. And when they saw us coming, big people, big appetites, they went and ran down 2 chickens. So I did a mental calculation looking at the guys in this group, and I thought, this isn't going to be very good. So they cooked up these chickens, and I watched these people's eyes, and every night I took over sort of as the maternal unit and doled out whatever small portions were available. And by 5 days, everybody was very hungry and cranky. And somebody said so forlornly, "Aren't there eggs? Can't we just have an omelet?" So after 3 weeks of this, and walking by children with large stomachs, which I had seen in photographs but never really seen, I understood what food really meant. And when I left Bamako, the capital of Mali, there was a young black man who was making a living taking Polaroids of tourists who were coming and going. I'm so glad I have that picture, because I was euphoric from fasting. But I knew 2 days into it that this was going to be wonderful, that I didn't need all that food. I wasn't going to starve, and I was going to learn something about food. I really learned to understand what it's like to want food. So
actually, what I think you also learned, or actually practiced, well, what's it like to find the adventure or the truth in the moment, to have the new experience. I think you're drawn to experiences, right? To taste life, as it were.
Literally, in this case.
Yes, and to feel the variety of experiences. Do you think that the ability to do that allows you to be taught things you didn't expect to know?
Well, I think life is continuing education. I'm a curious person. I like to learn things. For example, when I was driven here from the airport, I asked a lot of questions about the region to remind myself and all the new, I could tell you an awful lot just from the 20-minute drive. I like to focus on where I am, what the trees are, you know, what's going on, what kind of snow is this, and we had a good time, good conversation.
How do you handle grief?
As part of everyday life. It's very interesting. My mother didn't have that built in. She thought it was something not to talk about or just put away. And she didn't like fresh flowers even because they were going to die. And she once said that, I started laughing. Because I like buds, and then I like to watch them open. And then, especially tulips, when they get to the dying stage, they're exuberant, you know. They're falling so beautifully, especially French tulips. They just swoop down and become swans.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned from nature that we're all part of the process. And I was sitting with my mother in May when she died, and it was a pretty remarkable experience. We just looked at each other, and I felt the way I felt when I left Bamako, in a way. I felt, because I engaged in, as you might say, the challenge of the situation, I felt euphoric at the completion.
It's something you clearly did not learn at home.
No, I like process. I'm very process-oriented. And so death, for example, when you say grief, I assume you mean the finality of death and separation. It's part of the process. If you like the beginning, the birth, the growth, you have to buy into the whole thing. There's no way you can just buy in partially, you know.
What do you mean by process?
I like the beginning, the middle, and the end. I like to participate in everything. I like to, when I had a place in Michigan, I grew food. I like seeds. I like watching them become sprouts. I like them filling out. And then I like to eat them. And then I also like to cull seeds and cull, you know, roots and do it again. In fact, I spoke with the driver about horticulture. She's a graduate of MSU, and we talked about the deer and culling the herds, but also about bulbs, because one year I planted 100 black parrot tulips in the ground, and when spring came, I think 3 came up. And it wasn't deer, it was chipmunks or moles, I can't remember now, but I certainly fed somebody.
So disappointments or setbacks, you view in what way?
As part of the process. I think you can't, if you don't feel disappointment and you don't feel loss and you don't feel grief, I don't believe, on the other hand, you feel ecstasis.
Mm-hmm.
If you numb it down, so you don't have those things happen. So how do you not have those things happen? Well, you can edit them out of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of people are sort of monotone. They speak in a monotone, or they anesthetize themselves with entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Or they translate emotional hunger into food.
What makes you laugh, Michele?
Serendipity,
Right.
and nuance, color, excitement,
Mm-hmm.
friendship.
What do you like in people? What attracts you to people?
Energy and imagination. Really, I've come to understand recently how important imagination really is, and fantasy. Just to project yourself out of the routine of the moment or the mundaneness of some of the tasks we perform on a regular basis, and to let your mind fly.
Einstein talked about imagination, and it's preeminent value. Right. There are things we take with us from childhood. What do you think were the gifts from your childhood?
A lot of gifts. First of all, of music. Both my parents played instruments and loved music. And music, they say, is a primary body function. It's not a secondary thing. There have been a lot of studies how music is physical. So sure, it's not oxygen, it's not food, it's not water, but it's right up there with primary activities. So I'm always grateful that it was always around me, and I have such familiarity that when I turn on the radio or I go to a concert, it's like an old friend.
When you think to do something, whether it's in your art or in your life, because I really think you're quite verbal, as I mentioned, and visual and auditory, as you're saying, but also you really think. That's where the process comes in. How do you figure out what to draw from, which side to draw from, in making your decisions or choosing a direction or seeking an answer?
Don't you often discover your first gut reaction is the best one? I think I really have a gut, a visceral reaction to things. Then I allow my mind to inform my process. And then I let my heart talk too. But basically, I know most of the things that I see to do are just what people call instinctive, or the other I word they use is intuitive. Well, what is intuition? There was a neurologist who was, and I saved the article, it was in the Science Times, in the New York Times about 3 years ago, and he said what we call intuition or being prescient or forethought was an evolutionary device. He said mammals, when they evolved in the great age of dinosaurs and little mammals came out, he said, you know, they came out at night in the beginning because the big dinosaurs were out all day, safety. He said, but also they had to have a strategy. They have to even understand to do that. He said, so thinking ahead is part of our wiring. And I think that's very true.
I think that's true for people like ourselves, but people like my husband, Ted, I think would be more literal. He would be more analytical. Actually, what I do is I get like 5 answers and how they're going to play out, and then the one with the most virtue, you'd say, shines through, but they're just like pictures.
Well, I bet when Ted met you, he didn't have 5 answers lined up. He knew in a visceral way in his gut.
You have to ask him.
I would be willing to bet. You see, those decisions are
visual.
Yeah, those are just there.
In relationships.
In many things. And it's knowing. It's also, you have to know yourself first to know in the secondary, you know, beyond your own borders.
People talk about knowing yourself. What do you think that really means to you?
For me, let's say life deals you a hand. You get 5 cards. For me, it's knowing what your strengths are, what your weaker cards are, and then you have a strategy. That's where the second, what you said, the strategy comes in. For example, I play my strong cards. I never sat down and made a lot of noise about the weak ones or tried to puff them up or, you know, extend them, so to speak. So that's the way I have looked at how I approach things. So I go forward with my best idea, and I don't worry that it might not work, or maybe this isn't right for me. So when you know yourself, you know what your strengths are, and you know what your weaknesses are. And then you learn through trial and error, you know, how to reinforce, and you go forward with the positive ones.
When you have an idea of things you want to do, and you're presented with people who would care to block you from doing that. What have you learned about dealing with such people?
Well, basically, when you get, let's call the idea a projection. You know, if you aim the projection as high as you can, nobody can get to it. It becomes a matter then of strategy and reality, to the extent that I assume we're speaking of doable things. So it's always taking the higher position, and then nobody can get to you. Nothing can get to you. And ideas are wonderfully intangible. You know, they're not like your deer. It's not something somebody can,
Right.
It has no body
Contour.
mass, yes.
And what makes people accept a new idea?
Maybe hunger, maybe back to hunger, to extend past their own parameters. I think it's a very human wiring to want to know what's past that bush, what's past the next valley, what's over that mountain. That's what got us up and moving. That's what evolution is, too.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
To seek the new.
To seek the new.
To seek to
better.
understand.
Even not just new. Maybe there's better and bigger bushes over there. Maybe the birds are different over there. It's that kind of curiosity that has kept humans on the go, looking for better opportunity for themselves, better for their children. I love the speculation on that Iceman that they found in the Tyrolean mountains between Austria and Italy. Where was he going in that storm? And
what do they hope for?
Yes, and they write about his wonderful leather outfit and how it was sewn, his medicine pouch filled with herbs. They write about, yes, he must have been important, but the most wonderful is the way they finish all the articles on him is, where was he going in this storm? Why was he by himself? Why was a man of this importance out alone this time of year when they knew storms could come? I mean, all of the thinking, it's so amazing.
When you want to try something new, I know you read a lot. What do you like to read in books?
For me, the frontier is the brain, and ever since the MRI and the all of these imaging devices, and they can really see how excited you get and emotional you get and how the synapses connect. And I like neurology, and I'm reading a book by Antonio Damasio called The Feeling of What Happens, and it's about the mind, the body, and emotion and how it all intersects. I love books like that. I get really thrilled, and they lead me to the next dialogue.
The thing I've really enjoyed is that you are a fellow reader and that you read at the margins of what you already know, but seek to build on that which you have taken into you. What would be the kind of relationships you would like to have in your life? What attracts you in friends? What kind of friends do you like to have?
Most of my friends are very adventuresome people, and they like to have adventures, so we have adventures. We go to a strange place in Newark, a diner we've read about that's Portuguese. I go there with my friend Jane, for example, for lunch. Things like that, just constant exploring the world. Once, driving to my friend Vera's house in Sag Harbor, by mistake we got off a detour and ended up in Astoria in Queens. And it was so interesting. We said, we're not lost, we're found. And we thought the porches looked great with the chairs and the roses coming up the trellises, and we said, we have to come back here when we're not on our way to dinner in Sag Harbor.
That's really interesting, how a deviant road reveals a whole different understanding of life. I'm really quite taken about synchronicity and unintended opportunities opening possibilities for you. I wanted to ask you how you keep yourself fresh. You know, when you're an artist, a lot of that's internal and by yourself, except for the promotion side or the sales side. But how do you keep yourself fresh as a person, as a wife, as a mother, as an artist? What do you do in the course of a week or a month or a day?
I listen. And the nice thing about the life I lead is that I meet so many interesting, even brilliant, radiant people. Last night, I took to dinner my studio manager because he did an installation in Taiwan of a work of art in containers. And I looked at his slides and looked at the photographs, and I learned so much. It was very exciting, first of all, to see what he was doing with his work. We don't have an opportunity during a working day. But secondly, I didn't understand very much of it, and so it was all new. You know, why put art in containers? Well, it was in Taiwan, and it has probably the largest port of containers in the world. And so it was reusing, recycling a commodity and making it into something other. And it was exciting. He explained how one artist cut the hole out of the back of the container, put water through, and made a waterfall. So wonderfully serendipitous there, imaginative, and in the background was a lake, so you thought it was all connected. And it was just a visual, what do they call that, a malaprop?
Malaprop.
Yes.
It's a strange thing to learn visually. What I mean by strange is that, you know, when you're first a child, you study everything, and then you know what a tree looks like or a person looks like, and then you're asked to see it differently, and that's what makes me laugh. I just love the contrasts in life, the unexpected or positive. I just love that, and I just love having a good time with people in the moment, just whatever the moment is, that is so precious and doesn't really ever come again. So
But the next one comes.
the next one comes. That's true. That's true.
There's a wonderful, I'm sure you read Heinrich Boll's,
Yes.
The Clown. I collect moments, he said. It was a wonderful, wonderful book.
You once said that to me, that I go for the magic moment, the special moment. Yeah.
That's what magic is. You know,
It's
it
special.
disappears quickly. You can't hold it.
Right. We want to thank Michele for being with us today. We've learned a great deal from Michele. For one, seek adventure. Understand that anything you might treasure is a commitment to see it through from life to death, from seed to flower to decline. To understand yourself well, to play to your strength, to understand for herself that life is process, and to understand that is to understand the sequence of things, including the decision to have a goal and what is the strategy to take you there, and that ideas, if they are big enough, transcend opposition, because people, for a variety of reasons, perhaps biologic, seek to understand or wish to understand or hope things are better over there or differently. And that in her friends, which she spends a fair amount of time with, she is refreshed by their diversity of interests, their ability to try something new, which is always a good thing to do, it's positive, and to really celebrate the unexpected, such as ending up in a different town, Astoria. And that in her heart, she tries to augment her field of interest, which is art, by studying things through books such as The Brain, The Frontier. And I think that combination of art and science is an interesting one we all should pursue, or at least allow ourselves to be open to. I think the great thing about Michele that she is trying to teach us or share with us is the acceptance of things even as you wish to advance your dreams. So thank you, Michele. When you see Michele in New York or even Midland, do thank her for sharing. And remember, kindness counts. Please, please. Or as my grandmother Anna Schoenwell used to say, give me my roses while I can smell them. So please go out and give someone real roses or just some compliments or do something sweet for someone you know and someone you don't know today and every day. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you another time. And thank you, Michele.
Junia.
To share your comments and suggestions, contact Junia. The email address is juniadone@aol.com or write to Post Office Box 169, Midland, Michigan 48640.